Welcome to today's webinar on navigating the budget and what it means for your business. My name is Jon Dudgeon. I'm CEO and co-founder of Blu Sky Chartered Accountants, and I'm joined today by Adrian O'Connell, our head of tax. With every budget, there's a lot of noise, a lot of stuff to cut through, and this session is for SME business owners, startup business owners and founders of businesses who want to know what really matters to them. By the end of this webinar, hopefully you'll have a good understanding of the breakdown of the key budget changes and a sense of how those changes affect your business and some clear next steps to act on as well. We're going to try and keep it in plain English, practical and focused on your bottom line. So we'll kick off, and we're aiming to get through everything fairly briefly. Probably about 20 minutes, I would say. Let's start off with the top budget headlines and what stood out for SMEs this time around. And Adi, were there any sort of key highlights that you want to touch on?
Yeah, thanks, John. I guess the key headline that most of you will be aware of, or at least should be aware of, is the changes to employers' NIC. So with effect from 6th of April 2025, the rate at which employers pay NIC rose from 13.8% to 15%. So an immediate sort of cost impact there. At the same time, the threshold at which the employees start paying NICs, and this is called the secondary threshold, has reduced. That's fallen from 9,100 to 5,000. So again, really sort of increased that pinch point for employers. However, to offset this, the employment allowance, which is used by employers to reduce the annual NI liability by up to the employment allowance amount, that increases from £5,000 to £10,500. So there is some bit of relief there, but overall, it's been seen with not a hugely positive lens, to be fair. At the same time, we've got the corporation tax rate that hasn't changed. So that's capped at 25% for the duration of Parliament. There is a lower rate of relief of 19%, and that's for profits of 50,000 or less. The 25% rate is applied to chargeable profits of £250,000 or more. And if you're between those two thresholds, there's what's called marginal relief that will effectively give you a blended rate between the two. But as we said, that sort of top rate of CT is going to be around at least through this Parliament. At the same time, we've got the VAT threshold, so that isn't something that came out of this budget. It actually came out of the prior budget, but we'll often see that some of these points follow on from one another. So the VAT threshold is currently at 90,000. It's good that that's risen from the spring budget. So for those smaller businesses that are close to the threshold, there might be a bit more wiggle room for them, but it's something to bear in mind. R&D relief, good news was, I guess, that continues. The changes the recent changes, there's a single scheme now rather than there were two schemes previously. In broad terms, it means that after corporate tax, there's a benefit to the business of around 15%. It's slightly more, I think it's 16.2% if you're a loss-making business. And there is also some enhanced relief if you are an R&D intensive SME. So if you spend 30% or more of your total expenditure on qualifying R&D, then you'll get actually a higher benefit up to 27%. But I guess the key message there is that the landscape of R&D has changed. Things are under more focus, and to meet the thresholds is becoming harder, I guess. So we'll touch on that a little bit later as well. If you're planning to, I guess, those smaller businesses to buy things, technology in particular, the good news was that full expensing, which is a form of capital allowance, continues. So it gives you a certainty that if you are planning to invest, that there will be tax relief of up to 100% in some cases available to you. So that is a positive for all businesses. There aren't any new sort of, I guess, venture capital announcements, but at the same time, it was confirmed that SCIS and IS continues, that it's subject to a clause that needs to be renewed, and it was. So therefore, that gives you some, again, clarity for founders or scale up startup businesses where they're looking to rely on these reliefs, that they will remain available. They're valuable reliefs, and that it's important they are used. They are nuanced at times, so they're not necessarily a banker. You do need to probably speak to somebody who works in this field to get a steer on it. But like I say, good news that it's still available to us. And I guess just the last point, HMRC is a recurring message from any budget really, but anti-avoidance or any sort of creativity around claims, they're looking to focus on. They always seem to be making more money available for those parts of HMRC that focus on inquiries or focus on areas, and so that will continue again, particularly in the R&D space.
Thanks, Adi. So this budget, and like the one before, I guess we can talk a little bit about how that sort of led into this latest budget as well. There was a lot covered. It impacted most taxes, and as we'd expect, if you pull on one tax, it normally has an impact on another. I guess for an SME business owner, though, there's three key things that we all sort of sit and think about when we're planning our strategy and thinking about what's next for our business. And they tend to be the costs of the business, the cash and funding of the business, and growth and hiring, I guess, as well. Is it possible just to for each of those themes, maybe just to pull out the key impacts from the budget as well? If we can start off with costs and maybe, I guess, the national insurance increases that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, of course, John. Yes, of course. As I said, employer NIC, that's a significant output of the budget, and it's something that's had a lot of focus and will have a lot of impact on business planning going forward. In addition to that, we've got, in addition to the NI changes, I guess, we've got ongoing auto enrollment requirements around pensions. So at the moment, we've got like an 8% contribution that needs to be made. That's an employer minimum of 3%, and employees need to contribute 5% unless they opt out of or enrollment or opt out of making contributions. So, from a business point of view, the combination of that NIC impact and the ongoing pension obligations, they are something that do need to be factored in, and will play a real part, I guess, particularly on SMEs, in the immediate future. At the same time, one thing I just want to touch on was that a lot of focus of the smaller businesses are around the energy costs and how that feeds into their budgets, and there wasn't any specific announcement of direct energy support. So really, it's all about trying to make what you've got as efficient as possible and planning ahead for those increases.
Yeah, and I guess those the increase in national insurance really is probably a planning point as well. It's effectively slowed down maybe some hiring decisions, and potentially the knock-on effect to employees as a pay increase or something like that might not happen as quickly as well. So overall, probably the feeling is it's had a negative effect on growth generally.
Yeah.
In terms of cash and funding, a lot of our clients, technology-based businesses, early stage. You mentioned R&D and SEIS and EIS. Some mixed news there as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've got the positive that R&D is still around, so that gives a degree of certainty, particularly for those in the tech space that feel like they really are meeting the requirements to be undertaking qualifying R&D. I guess the message is it's available, it's there to be used, but maybe you want to factor in the benefits or from a successful claim might take a bit longer to come through. They might also be subject to challenge a bit more. So, in terms of budgeting, if you budget in a particular amount that's going to come back to you, you may find that actually that's reduced slightly, subject to challenge by HMRC. So, definitely the ability to make the claims there, but just be, I guess, cautious in terms of when that benefit might flow through to you. From a funding point of view, I guess, the fact we've touched on the venture capital schemes that are HMRC approved. So in particular, the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme and the Enterprise Investment Scheme. The fact they're still here, that's great news for them. So that works for the business. It in particular works for the investors. The tax relief that comes to the investors are similar across both schemes, but very slightly differently. But knowing that you are able to put yourself through the scheme, and you can get advance assurance as well before you make an application. That's a good news story you can share with your investors, and then it gives them a degree of certainty around their own tax position. So the fact that that remains is good, as I say, for both the business and an investor. But that said, there's still certain requirements that need to be met when you make these applications. So I think the more kind of work you put in behind the scene at an early stage and get yourself prepared for those claims, that does become important. HMRC does expect a sort of certain minimum level of information, and so if you don't have that readily available, it can be more challenging to get this advance assurance or a successful application. So I think it's really a case of, for business owners out there, if they can have some proactive discussions with advisors or understand what it is they need to take forward, I think, get themselves set, but certainly use the relief that's there for them.
Yeah, I mean, SEIS and the EIS relief, is probably one of the only incentives that is still available and is really helpful for an SME business owner who, they are at the risky end of the business journey, I suppose. But then equally, it's a good incentive for, those high net worth individuals, angels who are looking to invest in those businesses as well. The budget was, the headline was, it was a budget for growth. What specifically came out of it that you feel is going to help a SME business owner grow their business, if anything?
Well, to be honest, I think in some respects it might be the reverse. I mean, yeah, it was talked about budget for growth, but I think for what we've talked about, particularly the employer NIC changes and the thresholds, and you've touched on already, John, in terms of growing your business by, building a team out, I think that could be more challenging in the short term. There is that immediate cost. We've touched on the employment allowance has increased, so I think that will work in some businesses' favour, but overall that may not have quite as material impact as perhaps was hoped. So I think there are some positive changes, but they're more on the fringes, and we might actually see that unfortunately more businesses actually suffer than are helped by this change. At the same time, there are various sort of training schemes and grants that are out there for SMEs, and I think it's important that businesses are aware of that. These can change not at any time, but I think the general availability of these can be a bit hit and miss, and I think the awareness of the schemes is probably the challenge. They're often under publicised. So I think as a general message, if you're looking for some sort of grant funding, there are things out there, and it's probably specific to your industry or sector, but again, go and take advice or sort of go looking for them, because each of these grants or schemes might only run for a period of time, and there might be certain requirements to be met, but there are things out there to help encourage growth, really.
Yeah, I think with regional grants or training grants, all those type of things, it's such a fast-moving environment, and I guess that's where our friends at UMi really come into their own, and being able to signpost SME business owners into the latest opportunities. That then, this budget, like everyone before them, has brought in some more incentives. Just sometimes they're hidden beneath it. So yeah, speak to the guys at UMi or about that. I guess most budgets, we hear all the headlines, and the sort of politicians have their sound bites and all of the rest of it. What else was there? Was anything missing? Something a bit risky? Something that you maybe thought was in but wasn't?
Yeah, I mean, like you just said, I think the funny thing with the budgets is there's a lot of headline announcements. Then when you look into the detail, there's lots of things that go under the radar. Sometimes these might be things that you wait consultation, or there's sort of subtle developments. So yeah, it's always worthwhile sort of looking further than just the headlines and find is there something specific to you, really. A few of the key points I guess we brought out is the fact that there's still not a fundamental reform to business rates, and again that's coming back to, I guess, the cost point we've touched on. It feels like some businesses get the benefit of that and are favoured, and it very much goes against other businesses. So your high street retailers, or anybody that's ultimately occupying it needs a huge space or bigger space to operate from. If they've got a sort of higher rateable value, that's what you're going to pay your business rates on. So some of the perhaps technology businesses who are an early stage, and there might be a smaller number of employees, and they don't quite need that footprint, I guess. They'll benefit from this, but Yeah, like we say, anyone's got sort of bricks and mortar, it's an ongoing sort of cost and a bit of a pain to them. So I think we'll have to just wait and see if anything comes on that down the line. You know, SMEs in particular, I think they can suffer from sort of late payment from creditors or larger businesses. So we've sort of been waiting to see what comes out in that space. And it didn't actually come out in the budget, in fact. It predated the October budget, but wasn't out by the spring budget. So it's something that's sort of fallen or come out in between. But there was something called the new Fair Payment Code that was introduced. And basically what this means is larger firms effectively being held to account and trying to get cash flowing back into businesses. So legislation was being brought out that requires all large businesses to include commentary around payment reporting in their annual reports. So that sort of degree of transparency, I think the feeling is should help seeing money flow through the system and ultimately into some of the smaller businesses, which should be a good thing. So again, probably watch this space on that one, but hopefully we'll see some positive changes. One of the things we were looking for was in terms of digital skills and sort of supporting founders, like what announcements were made to help business in that respect, and there were various announcements which was positive, helping SMEs in particular sort of the tech sector. So there was a thing called an SME Digital Adoption Task Force, and that's been extended and should be reporting. Well, it said early 2025. I'm not aware that reports come out, but the fact that was supported and has a remit into this year is good news. There was also sort of various sort of pots of money announced for different measures. So there was a pot of £4 million that was put towards a digital adoption pilot, and this was funding pilot programs that encourage tech adoption, particularly among SMEs. So again, that's a nice positive bit of news that came out. In addition to that, there was a much larger pot of money. I think it was £37 million that was looking or allocated digital integration in manufacturing. So again, if you're in that sector, I think I'd encourage you to sort of look out and see what's available to you. And then some sort of smaller or softer announcements, less sort of funded or less dictated by the amounts of money funded towards it, but talking about a review of barriers to adopting technology. So there's a review that's going to be initiated there. And also there's a body introduced called Skills England that was introduced, and their aim is to enhance that workforce capability. So basically that, business owners, the talent pool they've got is equipped with the necessary skills to meet demands both now and in the future. So I think, this will help all businesses sort of build out competent teams basically. So that was just, a few of the things were announced in that area. There's lots of others, but I think it gives you a feel that there was some good news there. And then, sorry, John.
Keep going.
I think, and in terms of risks, as you touched on, I think, it's a bit like a broken record, but R&D is certainly what we see quite frequently at the moment, that yes, there was positive news about, the scheme still existing going forward and that sort of certainty, but, as we've touched on before, there is definitely an increased scrutiny on claims. Getting a successful claim through has taken longer. There's more questions being asked. There's probably it feels like there's a higher bar to be met. So therefore, sort of record keeping is critical more so than ever, and certainly taking advice. In terms of R&D, the key message is it's all about advancements in science or technology, and it isn't necessarily making advancements for you as a business. It's actually advancing the field, and that's quite a difference there. So I think for anybody making claims in that area, just bear that in mind.
Great. Well, I'm a SME business owner. I imagine most of the audience for working with SME business owners all day, every day. One thing we've all got in common is, the budget's in the past, it's all behind us, and we're all action focused and want to look forward and take something, I guess, from this webinar that we can do. What are your sort of top tips in terms of what we should do now?
I guess first thing is take advice, or at least surround yourself by people that can help you. So whether that's an accountant or a tax advisor, or there'll be other people out there as well, who meet with funding requirements. It's all about having sort of proactive conversations, particularly around R&D, but also like cash flow planning. You know, you can't be too well prepared ultimately. So you know, do sort of heed or seek good advice. At the same time, you know, your forecasts are, you know, they are a forecast, they change. So sort of try and keep on top of that and make sort of timely updates, you know, particularly in terms of tax payments or any sort of changes to those. You know, you may find as a business, as you grow, you might move from an annual tax payment to quarterly tax payments. So, you know, factoring that into your budgets and your cash flow forecast is important. If you're looking to grow your team from a hiring perspective, you know, look at what incentives are out there to do so. But also, as we've covered sort of a number of times, you know, think about the cost changes, and again, how that feeds into your budget. You know, all these things will sort of hit the bottom line ultimately. But I guess above all, it's all about, you know, record keeping. Really, I think I can't kind of overstate really the importance of good records. It makes life easier for advisor. It makes it easier to do HMRC in terms of having sort of, you know, efficient and effective conversations with them. But at the same time, I think, as we've touched on, the bar is raising across various measures, and therefore, if we get good records in place up front and sort of maintain that behaviour, I think that will only help you in the longer term.
Brilliant. Well, I guess we're nearing a close now. So to sort of sum up what we've talked about, I think the budget was probably quite low key in terms of what went through compared to other budgets, but you know, no massive bigger ways, but certainly some clear signals and areas for the SME business owner to get stuck into. I think the key message from us is you know, is to go forward and find the positives and gain some confidence from some of the areas that we have highlighted as a positive. I think we're given that option of a free follow-up from the webinar as well. So you can speak to myself or AD via our website, which is blusky.co.uk, and we'll be happily dig into anything more specific. Anything else from you, AD?
No, I think that's right there, John. I think, like you say, the budget was interesting in certain measures. I think there were other announcements made, perhaps on the personal tax side, that were not so much unexpected, but probably more impactful. But you know, certainly from sort of an SME perspective, I think we've covered all the ground that was sort of the key issues. So hopefully there's some good learning there for those of you out there.
Great, thanks, AD, and I think that's a wrap, and call it a day there.